Hello everybody and welcome. This is a bit of a new camera angle, but I kind of like it. Unfortunately, it doesn't show the lights up there, but still works. Anyway, this is going to be a video on storytelling for artists, which basically. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of storytelling in how you can actually boost your sales and your reputation and just increase a little bit of your artistry in your art, basically, and how you do that through storytelling. Because a lot of the times we don't think of the story that we're trying to convey with our art, or you think about how to convey it, but not how it's being conveyed to somebody that would want to purchase the work. I appreciate you all for showing up and coming along, and if there's any questions or anything, please do, by all means. There is a group in the Creative Flair groups section about the storytelling for artists, and so please head into that. Any questions, there's a little forum. This is going to be a continuable thing that we're going to do, which is awesome. None of that was actually cool that I did of the awesomeness. Anyway, okay. There's a couple of people that are meant to be showing up, which is good. And I'm seeing a couple of things come through. Lovely. Beautiful. Hello. Welcome. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to be talking about is about the storytelling, obviously, because that's why you're here. At least I would hope so. And the first thing is collectors don't buy the art. Collectors are trying to buy into the story that your art does. And one of the reasons this is so important for artists, especially in creatives, is that sometimes we find it a little bit hard to connect with the collector and connect to people who would actually want to purchase our artwork. And the collector doesn't just view one painting or one artwork or a photograph and be like, yes, this is the thing that I must buy. This is what's going to transform my entire home. No, they're trying to buy into the story. And I myself can vouch for this. So I have been collecting artwork from artists for a little while now, and my girlfriend also enjoys collecting artworks with me, which is super fun. So all of the artworks that we buy, we actually talk to the artists a lot, and oftentimes we sort of recurringly buy artworks from those artists because we know their story. We know what they're doing. We keep up with them, and that's good. And that first artwork that we bought with the story behind it really meant something to us, which is just amazing. And that's what you want your artwork to be doing, is to basically latch onto the person that's viewing it, convey that story, and don't let them escape. Let them feel like this is the only artwork in the world that will give them that sense of feeling. And the reason this is so impeccably important, would be the right word to use for that, is actually because art is basically the oldest form of visual culture. It is communication. It's communication on the deepest primal level that we have. And so think back to Neolithic and cave paintings and stuff, and they were conveying stories through these cave paintings that they were making. And for me personally, that's why I genuinely love art, is because of its communication factor and how it's the oldest form of communication that we have and all of that stuff. But like I said, collectors don't just buy art. They're trying to buy the story that's behind it. And that's a whole collector thing. So I want you to really think about this for a second, okay? You're going to think about a piece of artwork that really just stuck with you, okay? And it might have been because of the colors or the technique, but it wasn't just because of those colors and the technique, right? It was because something about it really hit you, right? It wasn't just there, it really hit you. It made you feel something, right? Now, just think about that artwork. And if you want to, please, by all means, share that artwork in the Creative Flair group chat that we've got going on. And that would be lovely to see some of those works if you've got some of them in mind, right? And when you feel something by that artwork, that's the power of storytelling. Now, that feeling that you're getting by thinking of that artwork is what you want to convey to the collector or somebody who wants to buy your artwork, whether it's an original or a print or something like that, okay? I have this friend that had a painting that was sitting around for months, okay, absolutely months, and nobody cared, like absolutely nobody. And all he was doing was he took a photo of it, uploaded it onto his website, shared a little bit on his social media, and basically listed it for sale. And unfortunately, that's not enough, especially in today's world of art and creativity. That's not enough to actually make the sale, okay? A lot of the times, there's an artist on YouTube called Chuck Black who actually makes these beautiful wildlife paintings. And as he's painting them, he shares the story behind them. If you don't know him, go check him out, because watch some of his videos and you'll see exactly what I mean about that storytelling technique. Now, doing that through a video isn't going to be for everybody, okay? And that's why I'm here, okay, to help. So what this friend of mine did is he basically had it sitting around, and he turned around to me and was just like, James, why is nobody buying this artwork? And he sent me the link. I looked at it and was like, well, you've uploaded it, but you've not really shared it. You've not promoted it. And I said, why haven't you promoted it? And he was talking to me about he didn't want to seem inauthentic. He didn't want to seem pushy for people to buy it. And I was like, dude, you don't need to be pushy. You haven't shared anything about this work of what it means to you. Okay, so share why you made it, what it meant to you, where it came from. And within 48 hours, it had sold, and it was fantastic. And nothing about the painting actually changed. What changed was the story that he put around it. And it wasn't a made-up story. I don't think you should make up a story around your artwork. I really don't. I think you should really hone in to where you come from and what your beliefs in art are, and sort of just work into what you want to achieve through your art, if that makes any sense. If not, that's also fine, because I'm about to share more with you. Here's the good and the bad, okay? We live in a world that is absolutely overflowing with incredible art, okay? We just are. And there are thousands of artists, and every single one of them is trying to be seen, okay? So yes, talent matters, skill matters, but what's the catch? What's the thing, okay? The thing that makes people remember you isn't always the brushstrokes, okay? It's the story they connect it to, okay? So it's not just a matter of, okay, this is the paint on the canvas. It's that whole story. For example, I have a painting right there. I didn't make that. That's a Jonas Vermeer print that I got in Amsterdam when I got the privilege of going to see one of the exhibitions and the biggest show on Amsterdam works in the world. And it was amazing. And anyway, that is one of my favorite artworks by him. It's not Girl with a Pearl Earring, okay? It's not any of that. It's actually one called The Street, okay? And I will upload a photo of that into the Creative Flair group chat as well. And to me, it's just such a beautiful story that connects with it. And for me, what actually happened and changed my mindset on this work was I watched a video on it. I watched a video, I read the books, and I was like, this work, the story and the technique that's gone into that is just the one that I need, and I want that hanging on my wall. Not just because it looks beautiful and it suits any room that it goes into, which it does, but you know, it's that story that I connect with it every single time. As well as that, it's one of my dad's favorite paintings, so that also helps. But that's the thing you got to remember, is people connect emotionally to your work, okay? They really do. They don't just become fans, okay? They become a part of it. That's what we're trying to achieve. But they're not trying to see, okay, I love it. We want them to feel a part of it, like I do with the street painting. And that connection builds trust, okay? It builds meaning. Think about Banksy, for example. Yeah, you know, the art is great, you know, sure. But what made Banksy that real phenomenon that he really is, okay? It wasn't just stencils, it was the mystery. It's the narrative, right? It's the story that we have around this mysterious figure, yeah? And that's where your story is going to be the most powerful tool, and most artists completely overlook it. So what makes a true great artist's story? Also, if you're watching this live, fantastic. Thank you so much for showing up. If you're not watching this live, there's going to be a couple cuts and edits and stuff because I need sips of water and all that sort of stuff. Exhibit A. But if you are watching it live, amazing. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you showing up as well. Please, even if you're not watching it live or you are, one or the other, please head into the Creative Flair group chat that we've got around the storytelling for artists, because we're going to share updates. We're going to keep this going. Hopefully I can do more live sessions. If there's any personal questions or anything, please always feel free to DM me. I'm more than happy to answer things. Also, I'm thinking possibly about doing a audit on artworks. If you wanted to send me your artwork, and I've done art consultation for a couple of people in the past and basically helped them work out the story to put around their art, and I can audit that for you and give you a hand. And if you're part of the Creative Flair Elevate group, I'm more than happy to do that for free. So yeah, let me know if that's something you might be interested in. So back to what makes a true artist's story, right? What makes it great? There's a lot of people that overcomplicate the storytelling, okay? And that's fine. But in actuality, it's really simple, like painfully simple, right? There are three kinds of stories that make people really want to lean in, right? We have the origin story. So that's why you create, you as a person. This is where it started for you, okay? What made you pick up that brush or that pencil or that camera, okay? For me, before I ever even painted, I was actually a gymnast. I spent years in that world, in that scene, and I loved it. But art, for me, became a place where I could breathe, right? It was where I could just make sense of everything that was going on in my head. And that's my story. There's a lot more to it, but I think that basically gives you a little gist of what we're trying to do. Now, it doesn't need to sound perfect. It just needs to be real. The second one is actually the inspiration story. So what drives each piece of art you're creating? Every artwork has a heartbeat. It really does, okay? Every artwork is going to be seen by somebody different, but the work is alive. And there's this beautiful saying that one of my teachers taught me, and it was saying of artwork is activated by the viewer. It's only activated when it's presented in front of an audience. The artwork isn't alive until somebody's looking at it. And I love that saying. I love that idea. It really helps me whenever I'm creating art to put in front of a crit. So I'm, for example, currently working on an addiction series, and this is one of the works I'm currently working on, okay? So, for example, I'm not just painting somebody struggling. No, because what's the point in that? I'm trying to make you feel what it means to be trapped, okay? That's the idea behind this series of work that I'm doing. What it is to be consumed by something, absolutely consumed, okay? So that feeling is the story. That's what people are trying to connect to. So that's number 2, the inspiration story. So number 3 is going to be the transformation story. So how it connects to them, okay? Now this is where the story stops being yours and it starts becoming theirs a lot more, okay? This is where that shift sort of happens, and it's a crucial part. This is another story from one of my art friends, and he was saying this woman came up to him one day and basically said that she saw her brother in one of his paintings. And that moment really sort of hit him because he was a portrait artist and a figurative artist. And it wasn't of her brother, but she saw her brother in the painting, right? And he realized that what he had created traveled much further than him. It traveled further beyond himself. And that's the real power of a story, right? It creates bridges between yourself, the person, and the canvas. It bridges all of these gaps, and it's this beautiful thing to see. So how do you build your story? This is the bit you came to see, isn't it, right? How to do it yourself. I do apologize if it's dragged on a little bit, and you've probably all got really important things to do on this, what's today, Monday evening. I was doing uni all day. Now it's Monday evening. Okay, so how do we build your story? Okay, there's a really way to think about it. Now, I'm going to be honest, I've got a little screen just here that has all the little bullet points for me so I can read. So if I'm not looking directly at you, it's because I'm having to read these bullet points, okay? Because there's only a certain number of things I can store in my little head and my little noggin to actually talk to you about. Most of it I'm really good at. Certain things I need a little bit of oomph to go with, okay? So, here we go. Here's a really simple way to think about it, right? You've got the beginning, you've got conflict, and you've got resolution. So the beginning, where did it all start? Okay, the conflict, what challenges of emotions did fuel this work of yours? Okay, and you got the resolution. So what do you want to say to the world? Now think about this as a storytelling technique, right? Those 3 things, beginning, conflict, resolution, they are the key ingredients of any book, okay? That book that you love, that book that you fell in love with, that you always talk about, that you go, wow, it really connected with me. They're the 3 ingredients you've got, okay? But you don't need a novel, right? You don't need to sound like Shakespeare. You just need your honesty in the artwork that you're creating, okay? And that story that you're trying to put into that artwork. So speak in the first person, okay? You need to use emotional language, not just jargon, right? Don't hide the messy parts. That's the stuff people actually relate to. And this took me a little while to learn, honestly, because in social media world and social media terms, okay, everything's perfect. Everything needs to be perfect because it just is, and that's how it's perceived. But people aren't telling stories on Instagram a lot of the time, okay? Oftentimes they'll be telling the perfect story. But what are the things that we want to see, okay? Why do we watch a race? We want to see the crash. We want to see all the real stuff, right? So share the real struggles that you're going through. For example, I will more often than not share an issue that I'm having with a painting and I'll ask for help, or I'm struggling with something on social media that I don't understand. Or, for example, you've more than likely seen that the website has crashed a couple of times, and I've shared videos being like, oh my God, help me, this isn't good. And it's not just to get views, right? It's really not. It's actually a matter of building up a brand and a personality that people really connect to. Because I'm not just going to be like, oh my God, look at my life, it's perfect. Nobody wants that. Nobody cares, okay? Because it's not, and nobody's world is. No matter how much it's perceived on social media, it's just not true, okay? So don't hide those messy parts, because they really are the things that people are going to connect to with and basically look at you and go, wow, this person's like me. And that's what they'll see in the artwork that you're creating, right? Because people don't want perfect. They want real. So how do you share the story? That's how you found your story, okay? Find the story that you've got, and then you've just got to share it, okay? How do we do that? On Instagram, obviously, don't just post, new work. Instead share a few lines about what it meant to you. I've got another friend, actually. I know so many artists at this point. It's ridiculous. It's maddening. I've got this one friend, and he's used to the old way of the art world. Let's put it like that. And he will quite literally make a video, he will take a photo of his work and he'll upload it, and he'll just be like, artwork done by, name of artist. Or, this is the media, this is the medium, this is the date. There's no story behind it. If you go and search for an artist called Sophie Green, that's her name, Sophie Green, amazing artist. She's a wildlife artist, and I know many wildlife artists, but her personal brand that she puts into the work that she's trying to tell the story through is incredible. What she did is she made a series of artworks of animals being placed on top of plinths, right? And they had a completely white background. And I unfortunately can't remember the name of the thing. It was something like, it began with a C. It was something to do with how we consume things. Oh, it was called Commodities. There we go. Sorry about that. It was an artwork series called Commodities, and it was these endangered animals placed on top of these plinths with a completely white background. Beautiful, 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 right? And if you look into any of the works that she posted, it's not just a photo of the art. No, it's a photo of Flair or a video, but she shares the story behind each one of the animals that she's painting. Okay, and that's where people really sort of build up that connection. The other way to do it is your artist bio, right? Lots of artists will make this a little bit stiff, but you need to write it like a human being. It needs to be human, right? The artist bio, obviously what's written in your Instagram bio or your website bio, build that connection, build that story. Because if I'm going to buy an artwork, I want to know a little bit about the person, about the artist, really build up that personal connection. There's a lot of artists at art fairs, art shows, exhibitions. Make sure you speak from the heart to people. Don't just be like, okay, this is what I need to say, to get the sale, because it's not a sales pitch. It's more about getting that person to realize, I like this work, I like the story. This is what that artwork tells me. Okay, and that's what you need to do. So on your website, have an about page that actually, feels like you, because it needs to be you. Don't get ChatGPT to write it, because that's not you. Make the about page you, yeah? Honestly, pick up your phone, look in your camera, and sort of talk to it like you would to a friend, right? That's a good idea. When people land on your page, they shouldn't see art. They should see you, okay? I'm not saying that your face should just be on each one, but they want you and the artwork to be one, okay? Does that make sense? I'm going to share this little story that I've shared many times in the past about an invisible sculpture, okay, that was sold. And it was sold for about 15,000 euros, so just under 20,000 American dollars. So let me tell you this story, okay? And it shows how perfectly the powerful, perfect story can be, okay? And how the perception can be, even more than the physical object itself, okay? Because we're not selling... This isn't a story about selling a physical object. This is a story about how this man and artist sold a completely invisible sculpture. In 2021, this Italian artist, Salvatore Garoro, That is not how you pronounce the name. I just can't pronounce it. I do apologize. He sold a sculpture that, to all appearances, was completely invisible. Quite literally, nothing there whatsoever, okay? And the piece is called La Sono. And in Italian, it means I am. And it literally has no physical form. The buyer didn't receive a block of marble. He didn't receive a bronze cast. He didn't even get a piece of scrap metal, right? But what he got was a certificate of authenticity, plus instructions on how to display it in a clear way, okay? It can't have obstructions around it because that will interfere with the invisible artwork, right? It needs to be displayed in an unobstructed space with about 5 feet by 5 feet. And that's where the art is. That's where it metaphorically exists, okay? And yet, despite that there was nothing that actually existed about this work, it sold for 15,000 euros, okay? Apparently, there are different variations and versions or editions of this artwork that have sold for about 30,000 American dollars at other auctions, apparently. But it's a conceptual idea, right? So why did people pay for literally nothing, right? Because they were buying into the concept. They were buying into this idea. What they were mostly buying into was the story, okay? The provocative system, the emptiness, the preservation, the belief, as it's such a powerful, more than any material form, okay? That story that is around this invisible object was better for the person buying it than actually having a physical object. This is obviously the complete extremist edge and the very edge of where you'll go with the storytelling technique. And many of you aren't going to be selling an invisible sculpture, okay? I hope you're going to do something with your art and you build a story. If it is an invisible sculpture, good on you, but you need that storytelling technique to go around it because you can't just be like, here's a square box, give me money, right? It doesn't work like that. Part of being an artist is part of being able to tell a story and to be able to communicate that story you've got around your work, right? It's a very important part. Oftentimes, there's going to be points in your life. For example, if you're in an exhibition, you're more likely than not going to have to talk about the work. If you win an award, you have to get on stage and talk. And they're going to want you to talk about the work. They're going to want you to talk about the inspiration. They're going to want to talk about your life. They're going to want you to talk about all these things. So let's go through a step-by-step system on how you build this story. Okay, I've been through a bunch of examples. I've given you a rough guide. Let's go through it exactly, okay? So, step 1. Start with your spark, okay? Why you create. We've mentioned this before, but where did your journey begin? So you're going to want to ask, what was the moment or feeling that made you realize you needed to create, okay? This isn't about sounding impressive. No, it's about being honest with yourself and honest with the audience. Now, I'm not saying trauma dump on them, okay? That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying be honest with them about why you're creating. Okay. Think of Tracy Emin. Think of all the reasons she creates. People connect with that sort of stuff, and that's good, but that's where vulnerability connects, okay? Perfection doesn't. So be vulnerable, but don't be as vulnerable as you're comfortable being, okay? I'm not saying put all your life story out there if you're not comfortable with it, okay? So an example of this is I create because, okay? Why do you create? The first time I felt that need was when, okay? Art became my language when this happened, or something like that, okay? I'm going to share a lot of these into the group chat again as well. There will be a link to that if you don't have it or you're not on it, blah, blah, blah. So the artist that sold the invisible sculpture, he had a concept. Banksy has mystery. You have your truth, and that's your gold, right? That's what's going to really get you there. So the second step within this is identify the emotional core of your work, which, again, we've talked about. I'm just going into a little more prompting here for you, okay? So what do people feel when they see your artwork, okay? So forget the technical details and focus on the emotion. Forget what media it's made up on. Forget the size. Forget all of that. Focus on the emotion. Was there a struggle that you had to overcome with creating this artwork? Stuff like that. So is it freedom? Is it grief? Is it rebellion? Is it hope? Is it stillness? What really is it that people should care about this work for? Okay. So when somebody sees my work, I want them to feel blob. This piece is really about, I'm trying to get people to question or reflect on this. Something like that. The artist that sold the invisible work, he didn't sell air. He sold the idea of invisible presence. And that's powerful. You see how it goes of like, oh, I'm going to sell an invisible sculpture. What is it? It's invisible air. Well, air's invisible, I'm going to sell them nothing. But he didn't sell them nothing. He sold them that certificate of authenticity, okay? He sold the idea of invisible presence. Think about that. Somebody bought that, okay? That you can sell a work. You can sell an artwork that's linking to an emotional core. You really, really can, I promise. Okay, so that's step 2. Let's go into step 3. Turn it into a narrative structure, okay? Tell your story like you're telling it as a film, not a CV, okay? Yes, an artist's CV is going to be very important, but that's a whole other sort of category. We're talking about the story of your work, okay? It doesn't have to be cold, it doesn't have to be structured. It needs to be raw and emotional, okay? Like a short film. So, simple structure, 3 steps. Beginning, conflict, resolution. Beginning, the spark of origin. Conflict, the struggle, question, or obsession. And the resolution, so what your work is trying to say to the world. We've been through those. They are going to be so important for you to actually build this story around your work as it goes on, okay? So here's an example for my addiction series. The beginning, I started painting because I needed a place to make sense of pain. Conflict, I became obsessed with the way addiction consumes and isolates people. My resolution, my work is about making that invisible struggle visible, okay? It's personal, it's short, and it's emotionally loaded, and it gets people to think, okay? If I tell you there's a guy sitting on a bench and his heart is showing and aching, no, it's not about that. It's about the pain and suffering he feels, that isolation. You can't see it from here, but there's a little broken mirror just there in the painting. And it's all about these things of reflection, personal reflection. So it's about having that story that goes along with it. But if I didn't tell you any of this, you'd look at it and be like, okay. Now, yeah, a lot of the times you're going to look at the work and you'll feel something, okay? But this is why in museums they have the work with a little short story next to it to give you a little bit of context, okay? And that's what you need. So, step 4, attach it to the work itself, okay? Every piece has its heartbeat. I've mentioned that. So you need to learn to name it, okay? So pick one work. Just quickly pick one of the works you've got right now. I'll take your time. Once you've got, yep, okay, great. So pick one of the works. Why did you make this? What emotion or story is underneath it? What truth or idea am I communicating? Now, all you got to do from this, write 3-4 sentences, and that's your story caption. Okay, you can expand it, you can shorten it, depending on whatever you want to do. But think of the invisible one, right? This is how something invisible, like the artist's work, becomes valuable. Okay, it's through why did I make this? What emotion? What's the story? And what truth or idea am I communicating? They're your key points that you need to make about your work. Just as a very basic, beginner-friendly way of communicating your story around your work. That's the core part, okay? After that, it's about sharing it. And when I say share it, this needs to be done in a slightly strategic manner, but not like battleground strategy. It's your story is content, so use it, because it's too easy to run out of content sometimes. Your Instagram captions, that's what, 2-3 lines of your story, not just a generic new work launched. Some people, that's their entire brand. They're minimalist, and they don't share the stories, and that's fine. Sometimes that brand works, but it's easier to share the story, okay? Exhibitions. So say the story, you say the story that you're trying to talk about your work like you're talking to a friend, okay? Not just a buyer, not just a collector. Artist bios, make it human. Please don't, for the love of God, make it academic. Nobody wants to read it. You need to make it really personal for people to read. The other thing, you could always make a short form video. Record your voice telling the story behind a piece. That's always really powerful because it allows the person viewing it to feel more connected with the person. And that's always good. The goal isn't to sell. The goal is to connect. And the more you connect, the more sales come. Okay? I'll say that one more time. The goal isn't to sell. It is to connect. The more you connect, the more the sales will come. Again, this is live, so I don't really know how well a lot of this gets communicated across. If it does work well, I'm going to do a lot more of them. Yeah, okay, step 6. We've done 5. Yeah, we've done 5. Step 6 now. You're going to rehearse your story like it's a performance, okay? This is optional, but it's powerful, right? You should be able to tell your story in about 30 seconds or 3 minutes, okay? Depending on, like, the work. So artists often freeze when somebody says, oh, what's your work about? Now, I'm guilty of doing this and sort of not scaring artists, but sort of tripping them up. Not on purpose, but because I'm genuinely curious. I will always be at art fairs, okay? Any art fair that's there, I'm there. And I'll go up to just about every artist, right? And I will say, I like this work. What is it about? Tell me more. And you know the very first thing the artists tell me more often than not is what they painted it with. And it's either oil or acrylic or a photograph or something like that. They tell me the media, and it's like, oh, it's a photograph. I'm like, yeah, I can see that, but tell me the story. What's the meaning? I'll buy the work, but I need the story because I want to connect with it. I'm not just going to put anything in my rooms, but I want the story that goes with it, okay? So practice what the story is, okay? Practice saying it out loud. Record yourself. Refine it. Don't memorize, okay? Memorization's good for a certain level of just being able to fall back on it, okay? And it's like having a pitch, but it's not selling a product. It's about opening that door. I'm going to tell you a tiny little story behind this, okay? Is having a script is good if you're doing it a lot. So when somebody says, oh, what's the work about? Their script is that it's made of this media, or it's an oil painting on canvas, and it's like, okay, cool, but what's the work about? And they fall back on this because they don't know what the story is. When I started interviewing artists, I learned this really quick, but I had to learn a way to ask artists and talk to artists about what the story behind their work is. Now, this is where I'm somewhat, qualified to do this, is because I've talked and interviewed 600 artists and galleries, and every single one of those interviews always has the question, what does your work mean? Or what are you trying to talk about with this work, right? What are you really putting through? And there have been some cases where artists have turned around and they literally just be like, I actually don't know. And that's always interesting to me. And I'll be a little bit, not mean, but I'll sort of go into it as like, what do you mean you don't know? You tell me more. And when I first started out, this sort of got a lot of views and it was good and it was fun, And if the artist ever asked me to take it down, I always did. I've only ever had one person ask me to take a video down, and that was fine. I completely understood. But see, this is the thing, is people want to ask you that, whether they're an interviewer like me and I'm talking to you about your work, or they're a genuine buyer and collector, which I don't do many interviews nowadays with artists. There's a select few I will, but I don't need to be out there all the time because it can burn me out a lot of the times. One of the very first interview sessions I did, I interviewed like 80 artists in the span of like a couple of hours, and it was exhausting. I don't know where I get that energy from. I just do. And I still do that every year at the London Art Fair. I'm there for about 7 hours, give or take, if not more. And I think the last one we were there for about 11 and a half hours. And the entire time we're just on camera talking to people. And we made a 20-minute video from it. And it was exhausting. But that's the thing. I got to talk to these artists. I got to find out. I got to know about these stories. And, I get to ask galleries of like, what do you look for in an artist? And they'll often say, we actually go on to the artist's Instagram page. Now, this is for more new galleries, more modern, contemporary galleries, okay? They'll go onto the artist's Instagram and they'll browse the works, and they're not looking of, oh, it's pretty. They're looking, can we sell this artist's story? That's something that people really overlook, right? Is if somebody's trying to sell you, if you can't sell yourself to the person that can sell you, then you need to work into that sellability a little bit more, saleability of you and your brand and your personality. And it's not selling yourself off, okay? There's a big term of, oh, I'm gonna sell myself off for it. It's not like that at all. It's not cashing out. This is the story. This is what I've got to say. And if a gallery wants to be able to communicate that to a buyer, fantastic. If you can do it yourself, fantastic as well, because the gallery will bring you in to then talk about the work, because the buyer wants to talk to the artist directly. So fantastic. Anyway, here's a little bonus thing. The empty space exercise. Okay, this is inspired by the artist that sold the invisible work. So here's the thing, okay? Close your eyes and imagine that you've created an invisible sculpture, okay? And if you were to sell nothing, what story would make somebody believe in it? You would have sold absolutely nothing, okay? Now, this is going to basically get you to understand value isn't the object. It's in how you frame the story around it. That's where the value really lies. Okay. Anyway, hopefully that has been rather useful and helpful and has managed to enlighten some of you. Thank you, everybody, so much for anybody that's joined in live with the whole thing, which has been, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And then anybody that hasn't managed to, no problem. The video's up. I'm pretty certain. It should just be on. And please, by all means, head into the Creative Flair group chat if you got any questions or you want to share your work, or please, by all means, share the stories and let's all sort of get together and, be like, I like this story, but here's how you can refine it. And believe it or not, this is actually, the thing I'm good at is helping artists learn how to do this. Okay. And again, I'm more than happy to give an audit for some people for their Instagrams or their websites, or even just some artwork. So, I'll jump on a call with you and send me the artworks and I'll be like, okay, I like this, I like this, I like this. Tell me more. If you can't, I'll help you learn how to develop the story. Again, if you're an Elevate member, I'm more than happy to do this for free. Just send me an email or send me a direct message and, we'll jump on a call in like a couple of days or a week. So yeah, fantastic. Anyway, thank you so much. I really appreciate you just joining in. And have a great rest of your day.